A well-placed cut can make an empire bleed. Fortresses don't collapse for lack of steel, but because of a throat. Episode 1. I am Sam. Many call me success. But today, I want to talk about a failure. A failure worth tens of millions of dollars. Not for a lack of money, but for believing too much in one's own icon. Have you ever looked at the painting in Enhelap Square, Tehran? A U.S. aircraft carrier, on fire. The Americans say, propaganda. Others say, illusion. But I see an old memory dragged into the light. Because 60 years ago, right in Saigon, that icon was actually ripped apart. May 2, 1964. Saigon Port. The USNS cart lay there. Not noisy. Not bragging. Just standing still. Like a sleeping steel monster. 39 aircraft. Thousands of tons of ammunition. A long arm of Washington reaching into Indochina. The Americans believed one simple thing. In the heart of this city, no one can touch it. That belief was the first thing to be sunk. They didn't account for Lam Sun now. They didn't account for Nguyen Phu Hung. Two people stepping out of the shadows. No radar. No satellites. No ballistic computers. Only 80 kilograms of explosives. And something more dangerous. The patience of those with nothing left to lose. Can you imagine it? Soaking in sewage water. Breathing through bamboo tubes. Every heartbeat could be the last. While above their heads is an empire that believes no one dares to touch it. When the explosion rang out, it wasn't just steel being torn. It was arrogance being punctured. The monster tilted. Water rushed in. Silence. No naval battle. No missiles. No epic poems. Only a cold question ringing in the Americans' heads. What the hell just happened? In terms of military science, this was no miracle. They didn't hit the hull. They hit its throat. The engine room. The ballast system. The weakness every fortress has, but never wants to admit. Today, a Gerald Ford-class aircraft carrier costs $13 billion to build. But that is only the birth certificate. To exist, each day costs $6 million. Not fighting. Not firing a single bullet. Just living. What if it sinks? Salvage costs. Nuclear waste disposal. Psychological crisis. Financial crisis. Crisis of faith. At that point, it is no longer a weapon. It is a corpse too expensive to bury. Steve Bannon once said, America's problem does not lie in Tehran. It lies in Minneapolis. The empire is busy looking out at the ocean to flaunt its aircraft carriers, while the inner cities crack day by day. The painting in Tehran is not to scare. It is to remind that a well-placed cut at the right time can collapse all vanity. Whether in Saigon in 1964 or in any strait of the 21st century. But explosives are a thing of the past. Today, new monsters have been born. Faster than sound. Cheaper than you think. And no need for heroes. In the past, soldiers knew what they were dying for. Today, those being destroyed don't even know when they were targeted. It is no longer a war of courage. It is a war of silencing. Next episode, I will show you why the era of giants is counting down. When an empire is so rich, it doesn't dare to lose. Episode 2. I am Sam. Do you know what the most expensive thing in the world is? Not diamonds. Not oil. But existence. A Gerald Ford aircraft carrier. Costs $13 billion to be born. But to let it breathe, each day needs $6 million. Imagine. Every breath it takes is equal to the lifelong labor of hundreds of families. Meanwhile, Minneapolis burns. People argue about rent, healthcare, education, and their taxes are floating out to sea to feed an icon too big to take a risk. Step inside an aircraft carrier. You will see a city. Cinemas. Starbucks. Gyms. So convenient. That you forget. You are living on a floating nuclear bomb. Thousands of kilometers of cables. Hundreds of flood-proof compartments. All just to do one thing. To prolong death. For a few more hours. Or a few more days. Because if it sinks, it's not just losing a ship. It's an environmental disaster. A financial disaster. And the psychological disaster of an empire. History has already said this. In 1964, a few dozen kilograms of explosives tore apart American pride. The cost of the battle wasn't even equal to one party on the ship. But the price to patch up honor, patch up media, patch up faith, there is no number that can record it. That is the reason. Tehran paints burning aircraft carriers. They don't paint weapons. They paint financial pain. The message is simple. You are too rich to dare to lose. Aircraft carriers are strong because they have planes. But they are weak because they are too big. In modern warfare, the bigger something is, the easier it is to lock the target. No matter how thick the steel hull, it cannot withstand the temperature of a hypersonic warhead. The escort group? Only a circle delaying death. When the cost of protection is higher than the strategic value provided, then in economic terms, the ship has already sunk before setting sail. But it's still not the scariest thing. The scariest are those who don't need icons. UAVs. Cheap robots. No need for heroes. No need for manifestos. Only quantity. A pack of electronic wolves. Costing a few $1,000s each. Facing off. A $13 billion fortress. Not war. It's a ruthless accounting problem. At this point, the empire doesn't lose because it's weak, but loses because it's too expensive to be allowed to fail. Next episode, I will tell you about the invasion of the unmanned wolf packs. And then, the question is no longer who is stronger, but who can endure the loss longer. $13 billion can be blind before something that makes no noise. Episode 3. I am Sam. Success. In the world of giants, sound is the enemy. Do you know how expensive silence is? In 2005, the US Navy did a very strange thing. They didn't build new ships. They didn't upgrade radar. They didn't increase the budget. They hired an old Swedish submarine to defeat themselves. Its name was Gotland. Price: less than $100 million. Not flashy. Not a nuclear engine. No roar. Only one thing: an uncomfortable silence. In the exercise, Gotland slipped past the entire defense barrier worth tens of billions of dollars. Approached the USS Ronald Reagan. Took a photo of the propeller. Retreated. No one knew. In a real war, that photo is not a souvenir. It is a death sentence. Let's go back to Saigon, 1964. Lam Sun Now. Nguyen Phu Hung. No sonar. No Stirling engines. Only breath. And the ability to dissolve into the water. Today, military science calls it acoustic stealth. Something that Aegis systems, phased array radars, and billion-dollar satellites cannot hear. In the exercise, Gotland approached the aircraft carrier at a distance of less than 500 meters. At that distance, a $1 million torpedo will send $13 billion to the bottom of the sea in 180 seconds. Let's do a cold calculation. Gotland, $100 million. USS Ronald Reagan, $13 billion. Gotland crew, 25 people. Aircraft carrier crew, 5.500 people. If the aircraft carrier sinks, not just steel, not just money, but 5.500 families receiving death notices, compensation costs, retraining forces, moral loss, about $2.5 billion. Not counting 2 nuclear reactors lying still on the ocean floor. Blockade, decontamination, Cleanup. $40 billion over 50 years. This vanity is not only expensive while alive, it devastates even in death. So why does Tehran dare to hang a painting of a burning carrier? Because they have the Strait of Hormuz. The narrowest point, 33 kilometers. A bottleneck. In that bottleneck, the aircraft carrier loses its maneuverability. Iran has over 3,000 speedboats. Tens of thousands of smart mines. Cheap. No need for heroes. A Nimitz-class aircraft carrier needs 2 kilometers to stop completely. When you realize you have entered a minefield, then all vanity has become meaningless. The empire is trapped in a paradox. They spend too much money to create targets that are too big. But if you think submarines are already the biggest obsession, no. Something scarier is flying over our heads. When speed turns steel into butter. Episode 4. I am Sam. In the world of physics, there is a very simple formula. $E equals 1/2 mv squared $. Double the velocity, right pointing arrow 4 times the destructive power. But when velocity reaches Mach 10, it is no longer a collision. It is destruction at the molecular level. The Americans build steel armor meters thick, believing steel will protect steel. But before speed, steel is no longer steel. It becomes butter. In 1964, commandos needed silence. In 2026, assassins need a roar. A DF-21D Zircon missile, plunging down at a speed of 12.000 kilometers per hour. How long does the Aegis system have? Under 30 seconds. To identify, lock target, react. What is 30 seconds? Just enough for an officer to understand they are about to die. The Saigon cut in 1964 was an open wound. Today's hypersonic cut is a decapitation strike. Look at the math that Steve Bannon is obsessed with. Hypersonic missile, $5 to $10 million. Aircraft carrier, $13 billion. Right pointing arrow 1 vs 1.300. To stop one $5 million missile, the US must fire 2 SM-3s, each costing $11 million. Right pointing arrow $22 million. Just to try not to lose $13 billion. If the enemy launches 50 at the same time, the system saturates. At that point, the cost is no longer measured in money, but by the collapse of a national icon. Scientifically, Mach 10 creates a plasma layer right pointing arrow. Radar interference. The temperature of the missile tip, 2.000 degrees Celsius. No need for explosives. Kinetic energy alone is equivalent to several tons of TNT. The painting in Tehran is not science fiction. It is pure physics. Iran doesn't need a ship bigger than America's. They only need to be faster than America's electronic systems. The vanity of steel has lost to speed. But that is still not the bottom. There is something else. Smaller, cheaper, more persistent. It doesn't come from the sky. It surrounds you. Next episode, I will dissect with you. What will $13 billion do when attacked by 1.000 things worth $2? $13 billion against 1.000 cheap toys. Episode 5. I am Sam. Success. Do you know what is scarier than a Mach 10 missile? Not speed, but quantity. 1,000 plastic planes. Not stealthy. Not majestic. So small that radar doesn't consider them a threat. So cheap that each one costs as much as a dinner in Manhattan. Today, I will show you how a crowd of pocket change tears apart a billion-dollar fortress. Welcome to the era of swarm warfare. In 1964, Vietnamese commandos attacked from one direction. One knife strike. Deep enough. In 2026, electronic wolf packs Attack from 360 degrees. No heroes. No flashy command center. Only cold mathematics. A Gerald Ford-class aircraft carrier. Has about 80 defensive launch tubes. But if the enemy unleashes 500 suicide UAVs at once? Math doesn't lie. The system jams. Saturation. It's like using a top-tier hunting rifle to shoot a swarm of hornets. You hit 10. But the 21st one will sting you right in the eye. The Saigon knife strike of the past was a fatal blow. Today's swarm strike is 1,000 small cuts that make the giant bleed to death. Let's do a calculation that keeps the Pentagon awake. 1 suicide UAV, $2. 1 SM-2 interceptor missile, $2.100.000. The paradox. $2 million to shoot down. $2,000. Ratio 1 to 1.000 to shoot down 100 drones. The US spends $210 million of Minneapolis taxpayers' money. The enemy only loses $200,000. Pocket change. They don't need to sink the aircraft carrier. They only need to make you bankrupt before the battle even begins. The vanity of steel is being crushed by plastic and semiconductor chips. Electronic wolf packs don't aim at the hull. They aim at the eyes and the ears. Only takes one $2.000 UAV to crash into a radar face worth several $100 million. The aircraft carrier becomes a blind giant. No radar right-pointing arrow. Planes can't take off or land. $13 billion turns into a useless iron island in the middle of the ocean. Tehran said this in the square. No need to break the steel. Only need to break the function. When the symbol of power no longer has power, the collapse has begun. But it's still not the end. There is a strike that needs no UAV, no missile. A strike from within. Steve Bannon said, "The problem is not Tehran. The problem is Minneapolis." Next episode, I will show you how an empire can sink on its own land when the fortress still stands, but the foundation is rotten. Episode 6. I am Sam. Success. Do you know? A rusty nail can bring down an entire great machine? While the Pentagon is busy deterring Tehran with 10,000-mile voyages, Steve Bannon uttered a very short sentence. The problem is Minneapolis, the city with 13 large and small lakes on the banks of the Mississippi River, USA. Today, I will show you why an empire owning 11 aircraft carrier groups can sink right on land. In 1964, Vietnamese commandos attacked the USNS Card because they had a unified goal. That is the power of consensus. In 2026, look at America. Sociological surveys show the level of political division is at its highest since the Civil War. Minneapolis explodes. Cities burn themselves down because of injustice. In that context, the aircraft carrier out there becomes a luxury piece of jewelry on a body with a high fever. The old Saigon cut tore the hull. Today's Minneapolis cut tears the national will. If the soldier doesn't know what they are protecting, $13 billion of steel is just a floating prison. Look at the numbers that speak. Maintenance for one aircraft carrier per year, $1 billion. $1 billion for education plus urban security. Right-pointing arrow can change the fate of an entire city. Steve Bannon poses a naked moral question. What is the point of bombing Tehran when Minneapolis children are not safe in school? Every time a carrier leaves port, billions of dollars of taxpayers' money is burned into the ocean. Tehran paints burning aircraft carriers, not because they are stronger, but because they understand one thing: no nation wins outside if it is losing at home. In the science of psychological warfare, when the symbol of deterrence is exposed for its fragility, it backfires. The enemy sees the waste. The people see the injustice. The U.S. Navy can hide from radar, but it cannot hide from the anger of its own people. The steel fortress is shaking because the Minneapolis Foundation is rotten. And suppose one day the $13 billion monster is actually sunk. Have you ever wondered who will clean up that mess? Next episode, I will take you to where the real economic pain begins. After the explosion, after the victory, after the declaration, when the world has to pay for the corpse of an icon. Episode 7. I am Sam. Success. People usually celebrate when a ship is launched, but no one holds a funeral for it. When an aircraft carrier is sunk, the battle has only just begun. At the bottom of the deep sea, there is not just a steel corpse, but 2 nuclear reactors waiting for their shells to crack, and millions of liters of oil with nowhere to drift. You think sinking it costs a few $1 million and it's over? No. Collapse is a luxury, and no empire can afford that bill. The historical cut from USNS Card to USS America. In 1964, the USNS Card was sunk right at Saigon port. Depth: 15 meters. The Americans took months to patch the hull, pump water, and pull it up. Expensive, but still salvageable. 40 years later, in 2005, the U.S. itself sank the USS America. Not in war, but for testing. 4 weeks of continuous attacks before it finally agreed to lie down. Just the monitoring, measuring, and risk isolation consumed tens of millions of dollars. And that was a pre-planned sinking nightmare scenario. Now, imagine a Gerald Ford-class ship sunk at a depth of 3.000 meters at the Strait of Hormuz. It is no longer a shipwreck. It is a giant nuclear dirty bomb, lying still and waiting for time to do its work. Numbers not found in propaganda films. Blockading the radioactive waters approximately equals $500 million per year. Salvaging reactor cores, if still possible, is greater than or equal to $10 billion. Closing seaports due to pollution approximately equals $5 billion per day. Dumped straight into the global supply chain. Steve Bannon looks at Minneapolis burning, and he understands. Just the cost of cleaning trash at the bottom of the sea is enough to rebuild all of America. At Tehran, the painting of a burning aircraft carrier is not a military threat. It is an economic sentence. Military science perspective: toxic legacy. An aircraft carrier is a system of concentrated risk. In the old days, the card ran on conventional engines. Today, a carrier is a nuclear entity. Just the reactor shell cracking from a Mach 10 shock. Seawater rushes in. Pressure crushes. Corrosion 10 times faster. The loss is not just $13 billion of steel. It is a dead sea zone, a vanished fishing industry, and the prestige of a superpower unable to protect its own energy source. We have seen the price of destroying a fortress. So the question is, why is the world still busy building more? Or are we walking right back onto an old path? Sam will take you back through history to see mistakes are always recycled under the name of progress. The factory of mistakes, when history repeats. Episode 8. I am Sam. Success. History does not teach It only punishes. And the irony is, the most powerful people always believe this time they will be different. Battleships, the early 20th century obsession. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world went crazy for battleships. Thick steel, big guns. Whoever was bigger, that person ruled the ocean. Then one morning in 1941, Pearl Harbor, the steel monsters, collapsed under fragile aircraft wings, worth only a tiny fraction. The empire collapsed, not because it was weak, but because it was too confident. Aircraft carrier, the battleship of the 21st century. Today, the aircraft carrier is the new battleship. Too big, too expensive, and increasingly, no longer relevant. Hypersonic arrows don't need to get close, don't need to engage. They only need speed and coordinates. The historical cut. Saigon 1964. In 1964, the USNS Card lay in Saigon port. No fleet, no air force, only 80 kilograms of explosives, and asymmetric thinking. The Americans forgot the lesson of Pearl Harbor when they believed no one dares touch a symbol of power. The result? Military textbooks were rewritten in silence. Cold numbers. World War II. The U.S. had more than 100 aircraft carriers. Currently, only 11 superships remain. Not because they don't like them, but because there is no longer enough money to protect the icon. Building a ship, 10 years. Destroying it, 10 minutes. That is not defense. That is a venture investment with a guaranteed loss rate. Military science, the inevitable replacement. Every weapon has a strategic lifespan. Battleships died because of aircraft. Aircraft carriers are dying because of Mach 10 missiles, long-range UAVs, strikes beyond 2.000 kilometers. Why carry a $13 billion nuclear city near the enemy's shore, when all you need is an arrow launched from land? The vanity of steel is losing to the pragmatism of velocity. History has called the name. The aircraft carrier is standing before the 0 hour of decline. And if they disappear, the ocean order will be rewritten. Sam will take you to the new order of the sea, where unmanned fleets replace old icons, and aircraft carriers only remain as rusty museums at the bottom of the sea. Episode 9. I am Sam. Success. Have you ever wondered why we need a ship carrying 5,000 people when just a line of code can control an entire fleet? The era of speaking fortresses is closing. In its place is the era of fleets with no voice, no flags, no heroes, only algorithms and decisions made at places thousands of miles away from the battlefield. Before going further, let's pause for a beat. Because from here on, war will no longer have a face. No more charging shouts. No more deaths big enough for people to cry over. Only lines of command and red dots disappearing on a map. The historical cut from Saigon to the control center. In 1964, Commando Lam Son now had to pay with his own life. The sacrifice was direct. Blood flowed. Bodies fell into the water. In 2026, war has become sterile. Why bring children from Minneapolis to the middle of the ocean to be targets for hypersonic missiles? People no longer need courage, only enough bandwidth. The cut in Saigon years ago was a human knife strike. The cut of the future is the knife strike of digital indifference. The one being destroyed doesn't even know when they were targeted. It is no longer a war of courage. It is a war of silencing. The math of the new order. One Ford aircraft carrier, $13 billion. One medium unmanned ship, $20 million. With the money of one floating fortress, you can unleash 650 ghost ships scattered across the ocean. The opponent can shoot down 10, but the remaining 550 still lock the target. No need for glory. No need for gravestones. Steve Bannon will understand this, because it doesn't bring soldiers' corpses back to Minneapolis in neatly folded flags. In Tehran, people paint burning aircraft carriers to say goodbye to an old era. But the new order will not give them a target big enough to hate. The war of the future is a fog. You are destroyed by what you don't see and don't have time to name. Risk, dispersion, the survival of the empire. Military science calls it distributed operations. No longer a giant heart for the enemy to stab directly. Every part separated, every link independent. One dead point no longer pulls down the whole system. The vanity of steel has surrendered to the resilience of the network. The empire learns to survive by becoming small. The ocean is shedding its skin. Floating fortresses are receding into the museum of arrogance. But before we reach the end, let's hold on to a question. If power no longer has a shape, if war no longer has gunfire, if death is no longer on the news, do we still recognize it? Don't answer yet, because the final episode is not for debate. It is for settling down. Before asking where the world will go, ask yourself, if power no longer has a shape, if war no longer has gunfire, if death is no longer on the news, if there are no more aircraft carriers to be symbols of power, will we still recognize it? Keep that question in your mind. Don't answer yet, because episode 10 is not for debate. It is for reflection. Episode 10. I am Sam. We have gone together for nearly 100 minutes. Not to watch, but to endure. Enduring the collapse of icons that humans once believed were immortal. We see a ship torn apart in 1964 by people using courage to make up for weapons. We see $13 billion fortresses shivering before hypersonic arrows and electronic wolf packs. We hear the screams from Minneapolis and the terrifying silence of nuclear reactors at the bottom of the deep sea. 10 episodes are not just about military science. It is a dossier on arrogance. Every steel god believed they were immortal until the first knife strike touched the flesh. Do you know why the painting in Tehran was painted? Not to provoke war, but to end an illusion. The illusion that money can buy absolute safety. When a symbol of power becomes an economic burden, it is no longer a shield. It is a shackle. The rankings of collapse. Total cost for 11 aircraft carriers. In 50 years. $1 billion. That amount of money could do what? Eradicate poverty. Heal. Build. Steve Bannon calls it in absurdity. Military mathematics calls it a certain failure. A weapon dies as soon as the cost to destroy it is thousands of times cheaper than the cost to create it. The USNS Card in 1964 only needed a few hundred dong worth of explosives to shake the will of an empire. The painting in Tehran only needed a few cans of paint to give the Pentagon sleepless nights. In the end, steel is still just steel. It will rust. It will break. The only thing that cannot be defeated is awakening. Awakening to understand that true power does not lie in the thickness of the steel hull, but lies in the well-being in the heart of cities like Minneapolis. In the consensus of people who dare to sacrifice without needing a statue. We build giant fortresses only to hide the fear of our own smallness. What have we endured during these nearly 100 minutes? From watching right-pointing arrow experiencing And during those 100 minutes, where were you? Not in a Pentagon meeting room. Not on the deck of an aircraft carrier. But in front of a screen. An observer. A taxpayer. An heir to the consequences of decisions that you never voted on. Channel narrative. The figures used in this content come from public reports and common analyses in research circles. They are for reference, reflecting the socio-economic and military laws in motion, not absolute numbers or classified files. The purpose of the content series is not to advocate for any reckless or violent action, nor to take sides in a conflict. This is simply a special moment in contemporary history, when the slumber of the aircraft carrier was suddenly pulled onto the big screen by Tehran, in the heart of a crowded metropolis. The sense of panic that image creates, if viewed through the lens of military science, is not just fear. It opens up many questions worth thinking about, and also contains many things strange, cold, but worth understanding. After this video ends, please do not rush to watch the next. Let the screen go dark. Let the noise settle. And ask yourself a very small question. Do we build power to protect life, or to cover up our own fear? If you still carry that question when leaving this video, then this journey has not ended in vain. I am Sam. Success. Thank you for going to the very end of an era. The rest belongs to your silence.